Hey, and welcome to Great Lakes Church Online. My name's Carson. If we haven't had the chance to meet before, I'll be your host for the next couple minutes to let you know about a few things going on here at Great Lakes Church. We really appreciate you joining us, and if you are here for the very first time, we want to say thank you in a special way with a mystery gift. That's right, we'll ship it right to your house. All you have to do to claim the mystery gift is fill out the connection card right at this link. Once you do that, we'll get things sent your way as our way of expressing our gratitude that you've taken the leap of faith to join us today. And as a special bonus, we want to say thanks to everyone who joins us online regularly. If you consider yourself part of this crew, if this is the primary way in which you attend church, that's right, we're talking to you out there, the faithful ones showing up in their pajama pants with their bed head every week on Sunday morning. Be sure to go to this link and fill out the short form in which we'll send you a sticker so you can proudly proclaim your status as a member of our online crew. Once you've claimed your free swag, we want to make sure that you don't miss out on anything going on here at Great Lakes Church, especially as we ramp up for heading back to school this fall. There's events for our kids, for our students, and for the biggest kids of all. That's right, you are adults. And so if you want to know, the best place to stay updated is in the Great Lakes Church app. There's a rotating banner at the top of the app where you can swipe through and see what's coming up. If you don't like apps for some reason, you can go to greatlakeschurch.com and click on the events page. But regardless, just make sure that you stay informed and that you don't miss out on any of the cool stuff that we're hosting in the next month or so. So whether you've been a part of Great Lakes Church for a long time or you took the leap of faith to be here for the first time today, we can all agree on one thing. And that is that the growth that's happening within each and every one of us takes a frustratingly long time. It can take months, years, decades sometimes to see the results that we want to see. And so someone who is willing to share their story with us, well, their names are John and Johanna, and we think they're superb, and we're excited for you to check out their story.
Story behind me getting baptized. Actually, back in 2001, I was attending a completely different church, and my uncle happened to be a deacon, and I had enlisted into the Marines just before 9/11. And my uncle, fearing for what may happen, he basically had demanded, hey, you need to get baptized, you need to get baptized. I knew nothing about baptism, nothing at all. So off of a wing, hey, I'm gonna do it. I had no clue what it was. To me, it was, a bathtub. Now, fast forwarding almost 20 years later, I had been attending a Great Lakes Church. I still just had that resonating feeling inside of me that like something saying I need to be baptized. I need to be baptized. And I'm like, I'm fighting that. I've already been baptized, but something, come to find, God's just speaking to me saying, it's okay to do this. It's okay to do this. Yes, you have done it, but this is the meaning behind it. And many times I had heard Pastor Dave and other pastors talk about what baptism was. And I now I had an understanding of it. Even then I fought, I battled it. Like, I don't want to do it right now. I don't want to do it right now. And it only took finally that moment, my daughter asking about being baptized, for me to realize this is the time.
Well, so I was sitting at the dinner table and I was just like feeling it where I just wanted to be baptized. So I just said, I want to be baptized. And he was on his phone looking, and
I think within an hour of you saying that, I knew it. And I had already been emailing, I believe it was Rex.
And how did it feel when you got baptized?
it was exciting. And I was so excited that I would not stop talking. And when I first came out of the water, I was shocked because I didn't remember how many people were there. And I was so excited, and everybody was cheering for me, and that made me feel good. I would tell someone that was nervous about being baptized to not be, because God is with you, and He can help you through everything.
That's so good.
You just gave me chills.
so excited about the work that God is doing in the lives of John and Johanna and so many others here at Great Lakes Church. And maybe you can identify with some part of their story. Maybe you look at your life today and you say, man, I am so much closer to Jesus than I was a year ago or 5 years ago. Maybe you're just ready to take a public step in following Jesus. You want all your family and friends to know that you're all in on this journey of following Christ. Maybe you just want to know a little bit more about baptism and whether it's for you. If you identify with any of those prompts, we invite you to be baptized at our upcoming worship night at the Racine campus. All are invited September 26th. And if you want to know more about the event or sign up to be baptized, again, there's a header in the Great Lakes Church app where you can find out more, or you can go to the events page at greatlakeschurch.com to sign up. And we would love to see you there. Finally, a huge thank you to all of you who have partnered with us in making this ministry of loving and serving people here, near, and far a possibility. It is only through linking arms financially that it is possible to go and love and serve people, to sow into the lives of John, Johanna, and many others, to host events like we have coming up that reach kids, students, and people of all ages. And if you're ready to partner with us today, we invite you to join us in that process by going to this link and signing up for digital giving. You can also mail in your gift, but regardless, it is only possible because we are doing it as a community. We love you, Great Lakes Church. We are excited to have you with us this week. Don't forget to claim that water bottle or that shiny new sticker, and we will see you next week. Enjoy the talk.
Well, I want to start officially today the way we start every week, and that's welcoming our different campuses. So, to our Kenosha campus, Racine campus, online campus, and to all in the room with me, we welcome every single one of you beautiful faces. Man, you guys are looking good. Are you feeling good? You know they are, because on Wednesday evenings, we give away filet mignon and mashed potatoes prior to the service, so you are welcome. So here's the deal, guys. We are in a teaching series called Summer School, and so every week we've just been taking on a unique topic, and our goal is just to accumulate knowledge on different topics, but more importantly, to apply that knowledge, because as we apply knowledge, as we apply what we're learning, what happens is we grow and we mature. Now, almost 20 years ago, an author by the name of Seth Godin wrote a book called Purple Cow, all right? Purple Cow, and it is a book about marketing. And what Godin writes about in this book is how as the world becomes more and more noisy, there's more and more stuff going on, all these distractions happening around us, he says businesses have to find a way to stand out. They have to find a way to be unique. They have to find a way to be remarkable in how they advertise and in what they offer, all right? And so the metaphor he uses is if you're driving through the Midwest and you're out in the country and you're driving on some roads and you see a brown cow, you're not going to be all that impressed, right? Because we have lots and lots and lots of brown cows in the Midwest. But he says if you're driving and you happen to see a purple cow, he said, now that's remarkable. He says you're going to stop. You're going to pull over, right? You're going to take a picture. You'll probably get a selfie with it. You'll put a video on TikTok because the purple cow has thrown you off. And so he says what we want to do in the world of marketing is we want to create purple cows, things that are unique. Now, you can do this in different areas of life. Back in 2014, my son Jade and I, we were looking at places to go for just a father-son vacation, and we ended up finding a cabin in northern Wisconsin that looked like a UFO, right? They called it a cabin, but this is what it looked like. And it was awesome, and it was a great experience. That is a purple cow type of experience. In the 1980s, right, early 80s, 40 years ago, the DeLorean was a purple cow. Now, it did not get the best reviews. It wasn't like the most reliable car from people who are buying it and the most powerful car. But even today, 40 years later, people still feel nostalgic when they see a DeLorean. When it comes to furniture stores, IKEA is a purple cow. To be clear, it is also a cult. But it's a purple cow, right? They've got stores all over the world. And so what I want to do today is I want to talk about our words and how our words have the potential to be purple cows in the lives of the people we interact with. Our words have the potential to be remarkable and leave a lasting impression on others. That when they walk away from us, they're saying something is different about that person. Or that was an experience I haven't had in a while. Now, we speak a lot of words because if you were to take all of the words that we speak as individuals, so this isn't collectively, but it's individuals, if I were to take all the words that I speak on a weekly basis, it would end up being about the size of a novel. Okay, so every week I speak an entire novel, and so do you. Some of you probably speak 2 or 3 novels a week, but the question that I want you to consider is, what is it about your novel that you write every single week with your words? What is it about that novel that's remarkable? What is it that's memorable? What is it that is leaving a mark on the lives of individuals? There's 500,000 words in the English language, but most of us have a vocabulary limited to about 5,000 words. All right, and that's fine. That's pretty much all we need. But those 5,000 words, those are the words we use to communicate ideas and emotions. Those are the words we use to talk about events and desires. And how we choose to use those words, how we choose to connect those words, string them together matters. Because you already know this. Words have power. The words that we use have the power to unite people or divide people. They have the capacity to make someone feel loved or feel rejected. The words that we speak have the potential to inspire people and lift them up, or they have the power to tear them down. And so 3,000 years ago, King Solomon of Israel, he writes about this, and here's what Solomon wrote. He said, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. Now, this sounds like an exaggeration, right? The tongue can bring death or life. It is not an exaggeration. Wars have been started with words. Divorce initiated with words. Parents split up from their kids, haven't talked to them in years because of words that were exchanged. The tongue can bring death, and it can bring life. Incredible movements have been started with words. Marriages have been restored because of words. People have accomplished incredible things, things that they never dreamed that they could accomplish because of words that were spoken to them. Our words have power, and if we use our words correctly, they will become a purple cow in the life of an individual. They will become something that's memorable and remarkable and something that marks them in a significant way. James, who was a disciple of Jesus, he writes a letter in the first century, and he focuses on the impact of words. Here's what James writes. He says, if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. Now, that's a big statement, right? We'd be perfect. And he's saying, hey, here's the deal. If you ever find a way to keep your mouth in check, that is about as mature as you will ever get. Because your mouth is way more difficult to control than any other part of your life. It's more difficult to control your mouth than it is your hormones and your emotions and your thoughts. Now, what makes this statement that James makes so fascinating to me is the context in which he's making it. Because James is actually writing to followers of Jesus. He's writing to Jewish Christians who are being oppressed, right? So he's writing to a group of people. They've been driven from their homes. They've lost their income. They've been separated from friends and relatives because of their faith. This is a group of people who are lonely and they are hurting. And James knows their situation. And James also knows that when there is anger inside of us, when there is bitterness inside of us, when there is fear inside of us, when there is insecurity inside of us, James knows it's just natural. It's part of being human that whatever is inside of us eventually makes its way out through our words. And so he says, hey, I want you to be careful. I know the situation you're going through, but you got to be careful with your words. And the point that James makes all throughout his writing about words is this, that the tongue is disproportionately powerful. The tongue is disproportionately powerful. So even though it weighs a few ounces, it has enormous power. In fact, our words have so much power that James actually feels compelled to give us a couple different illustrations so that we can hopefully in some way grasp the impact of our words. And the first word picture he gives us is this image of a steel bit in the mouth of a horse. Okay, so here's what he writes. He says, we can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth. James says, check this out. You can take something that weighs about a pound, and you can put it into the mouth of something that weighs, 800 or 1,000 pounds, or Clydesdale weighs 2,000 pounds, and you can control the entire horse. That's the power of your words. With your words, you can create fear in people, or you can calm them down. With your words, you can fuel insecurity, or you can build someone's confidence. Words have that kind of power. And then James gives us another illustration. Here's what he says. He says, and a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. So same principle we just talked about, different word picture. He says the course of a massive ship is determined by a relatively small rudder. So something the size of your front door can control a massive ocean-going sea vessel, right? It can control a cruise ship. It's just fascinating, the power of something that small. And then James continues. He says, in the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. Now, we all know what grand speeches are, right? Those are speeches where somebody gets up and they say something and their words have impact. And everybody's listening carefully. So when a CEO gets in front of a microphone and they're about to share the earnings report for the company and they're going to talk about whether they met expectations or exceeded expectations or they fell behind, let me tell you, the investors are listening very carefully. And it's going to affect the market. When a president gives an address of some sort, people are listening. It's a grand speech. Probably the biggest grand speech that I give on a somewhat regular basis is a wedding, because those words are legally binding. So people listen, especially the bride and groom. They're usually the only people really listening. But they're listening to those words and they're exchanging them with each other. And James says, you don't realize it, but the words you speak are grand speeches. You are communicating important messages. And then he goes into another illustration. Here's what he says. He says, in the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. One spark can ignite something and cause unthinkable damage. So several years ago, I had a very moving experience, very emotional. I stood in front of a monument at a cemetery in Chicago, right, about an hour south of the Wisconsin border. It was a monument for 92 children and 3 nuns who had lost their life in a school fire back in 1958. It's believed that the fire started in a trash bin. Nobody ever was charged for this, but through the investigations, it was revealed that a kid had been playing with matches, so it's thought that he threw one of the matches into the trash bin, and after it smoldered for about 20 minutes, it just gradually started to spread until it became impossible to control. Unthinkable damage. Something so small, a match that can fit in the palm of our hand, has the potential to create a fire that burns and leaves tragedy in its wake. And it's not fair. Right? It doesn't really balance out when it comes to cause and effect. And that's the point that James is trying to make. Right? Saying the tongue is disproportionately powerful. And that's why I think a lot of us, including myself, we have a difficult time connecting the dots on this, because it's like, well, all I said was, and then she went ballistic. All I said was, it's like his whole life was ruined. All I said was, and now they don't talk to me. Remember like 10 years ago, I don't know her name off the top of my head, but it was a young teenage girl who was texting her boyfriend, and they had already had conversation about this, and she convinced him to kill himself. And it ends up in the courts, and it was a bigger deal. It was super emotional. It's like, well, all I said was. And it doesn't make sense to us, but that's what James is saying. He's saying it doesn't make sense. So you need to pay attention. There's power in your words. Your words can start a fire that you can't put out. And it's not that you don't want to. No, you absolutely want to. And you'll do anything to put it out. But he said there are some times where the fire is burning so out of control that we just become a bystander in our own story. And as desperately as we want to put the fire out, we are unable to. And he says, I'm warning you, expect huge repercussions when you use your words in an irresponsible way. And then just in case we're missing the point, he continues. He says, among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a world of wickedness corrupting your entire body. Right, super graphic language here. Right, what James is doing, he's making a point. He's saying, come on, this can do so much damage. It's like right now, right? I got a microphone on. We're recording the service. We've got an online crew. We've got all of you wonderful people. And if I wanted, I could take this moment right now. Just think of all the damage I could do with the words I speak in the next few minutes. It would be the most memorable talk you would ever hear. You'd go home, you're like, wow, did you miss a service, right? I could embarrass people. I could shock people. There are people in this room who shared some pretty personal things with me. I could get out and just tell you their stories. I could make up stories about people. It would be unthinkable the amount of damage that could be done. And James is saying, I'm warning you. The tongue is powerful. He continues, he says, it can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. This is not a lighthearted warning. With our mouths, we can burn down a marriage. With our mouths, we can destroy a lifelong friendship. With our mouths, we can burn down a career. And it's hard to make sense of, right? Because our words don't just affect our life in that moment and what's happening at that exact time that we speak them. Our words have repercussions often that last a very, very, very long time, sometimes a lifetime. Now, those of you who are parents in the room, I want to encourage you, listen carefully to me, all right? I'm not going to speak through here, all right? When we speak to our kids, it doesn't feel like this. It's hard to think this way. It's not easy to believe, but when we speak to our kids, we are speaking through a megaphone. I'm not talking about the trivial things where we're goofing off and we're joking about that and talking about minimal things in life, but I'm talking about when we're having a conversation of any significance, what we communicate to them, whether it's we're proud of you or we're disappointed in you, based on the choice of words. We are speaking to them through a megaphone. That's how they hear it. When we communicate to our kids and we focus on their strengths or their weaknesses, whatever we choose to focus on, it's being heard through a megaphone. Whether we express joy or frustration, again, we're speaking through a megaphone. And years from now, our kids will remember, for the good or bad, some of the more important things that were said to them or some of the most intense things that were said to them. This is how we work as humans. This is how our minds work. And so I'm begging you to think about this. I'm begging you to get this in your mind, and my wife is really, really good at reminding me of this. My wife, throughout our marriage, she'll say, Dave, I know you're proud of our kids. Have you told them lately? Hey, Dave, I know you love our kids. Have you told them lately? Because she understands that, hey, when we speak to our kids, it's through a megaphone. And the crazy thing is this, your kids can be grown up. Your kids can be out of the house. Your kids can be 40 or 50 years old. And if you're the parent, what you say to them is still heard through a megaphone. And my parents understand this. And they've done a great job regularly, texting me, calling me. Dave, you're our favorite child. Dave, we love you more than the others. Right? Here's what James writes next. He says, people can tame all kinds of animals and birds and reptiles and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. Now, when James says no one can tame the tongue, what he really means is no one can tame the tongue. You can't, your mama can't, your grandma can't, your pastor can't, believe me, right? He says no one can tame the tongue. You will never be so mature that you are exempt from the potential you have to burn something down with your words. I was thinking this last week of how a few years ago, some of you remember the former owner of the Clippers, how he was recorded. He was like 80 years old at the time, and he was recorded in a conversation, and the conversation was leaked out, and he ends up losing ownership of a professional basketball team because of his words. At 80 years old, a guy with that much power, a guy with that much influence, and a guy who quite honestly is that age ought to be smarter than that, ought to be more mature, ought to be more disciplined. But James says, nope, we'll never get so mature that we can fully control our tongue. James says this, he says, it is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. So sometimes he says we use our words to honor and praise our Heavenly Father, and we gather together with other followers of Jesus, and we sing songs of worship and songs of praise. Or we listen to worship music and we engage with it. And he says, and then sometimes we use the very same mouth that we used to worship, and we turn around and we gossip and we criticize and we belittle people. And James is asking, what's up with that? How is that even possible? Here's what we read next. He says, and so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. This should not be possible. We should not be able to use the same tongue to worship God and then turn around and belittle or demean or say mean-spirited things about someone made in the image of God. And then after reiterating his point a couple of times, James just hits the brakes. He just stops talking about it and he switches directions. It's like, hey guys, your words, they are dangerous. They're like a match. You can set a forest on fire and then it's burning out of control and you can't do anything about it. All right, next topic. It's like, what in the world just happened? But he's making a point. Our words have power. So 3,000 years ago, when King Solomon writes a book filled with insights and wisdom, one of the insights and one of the things that he keeps coming back to over and over and over is the very same thing James talks about, the power of the tongue. He's saying, man, with all my wisdom, with all my understanding, I've come to grow in the understanding that the tongue has power. Here's one of the things he wrote. He says, too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. Get ready for this, guys. You do not have to say everything you think. You do not have to correct someone every time that they're wrong about some little detail. You don't have to share your opinion on every issue. You want to be heard, you have to be careful how much you share. Another thing Solomon wrote was this. He says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. There's something in life called the crazy cycle. I've been caught up in the crazy cycle a lot in my life. What the crazy cycle is, when somebody says something to you or does something to you that you find unkind or disrespectful or mean-spirited, the way you respond is you respond with revenge. You react the same way they acted to you, you now act back. You're unkind to them, you speak mean things to them, you want to retaliate, you want to get them, and so you do that to them. And then guess what they do back to you? The same thing. And you're caught in this crazy cycle, and it just doesn't stop. And I says this, and I say this, and James says, or King Solomon says, hey, I got the solution. It's called a gentle answer. What a gentle answer does is it breaks the crazy cycle. A gentle answer is when we think through our response. A gentle answer is when we consciously decide, I'm going to be kind and thoughtful in how I respond to this situation. On a side note, you can actually use the right words, but communicate them in the wrong way, and that will not break the crazy cycle. Right words in the right way. Another thing Solomon wrote was this. He said, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. Kind words. That is literally the only filter I use for my social media post. Is it kind? It's also the reason I only post 4 or 5 times a year. Right? Our words can bring death or life. And so here's my challenge. Let's be generous with our words. To be generous means to live open-handed. To be generous means to share. It means to give something away that's unexpected. Generosity is not limited to money, right? We think about it often in terms of money, and we ought to be generous with money. But this is about being generous with our words, where we look for ways to speak life to people. And the great thing about being generous with words is there's an unlimited supply. So I'm going to use 10,000 or 15,000 words today, and guess what I got tomorrow? Another 10 or 15,000 words. And I'm going to wake up the next day, and it's another 10 or 15,000 words. So to be generous with our words means I intentionally look for ways to speak life-giving words to people. Life-giving words are words that unify. They're words that bring hope. Life-giving words are words that build faith and encourage people. They're words that bless people. I was around this individual, and man, I just feel so blessed to have been in that conversation, just the things they spoke over me. Life-giving words are words that heal. They're words that reconcile, right? They're words that inspire people where they feel like they can go take the world. They're words that affirm. Most of us, we look at a list like this, and we're like, yeah, I do that from time to time. I'm pretty good at that. And I think we all are, and I hope we all are. But if we're truly going to be generous with our words, we're going to take these kind of words, these life-giving words, and we're going to find ways to build them into our life where we use them freely and regularly. We're going to be open-handed with them. And if we do that, what happens is our words are like purple cows. They stand out. They have a lasting impact. People remember, man, I got around Dave, and this is what he said to me. 15 years from now, they'll say, I still remember when Dave sent me that card. I still remember when Dave sent me that note. If I build that into my life. And so if we're going to be generous with our words, we just have to say, I'm going to find ways to express them, right? Sometimes that means express them verbally. I'm going to say them to their face, out loud, and I think that's a great practice. Other times it's going to be, I'm going to text them. One of the things that I like to do on a regular basis, especially if someone's going through a difficult time in life, I like to text them an entire prayer. I'll write out the prayer and I'll text it to them because I know it's encouraging them. Sending a card to someone is a way to build the generosity of words. In fact, over the last few years here at Great Lakes Church, as we went through some tough seasons and we've gone through transitions, I've kept literally every card sent to me. And I go through these on a somewhat regular basis, not monthly, but I'll go through some of these and just start reading them to build up my level of encouragement when I start getting discouraged. And yeah, about 90% of these are from my mom. They still believe in you. But guys, we need to build this kind of stuff into our life, right? Maybe life-giving word is just bragging on somebody when they're not around. Because what it does is it builds up this habit of, instead of gossiping and tearing people down, we find ways when we're talking about someone to build them up. So how do you use your words? Do you use your words to build people up? To compliment people, to encourage people? Do you use your words to bring hope to people? Do you use your words to reconcile people and try to be at peace with others? Or are your words filled with resentment? Are they filled with fear, with jealousy, with insecurity? Do you have this incessant feeling inside of you like you have to use your words to point out the weaknesses in others and the weaknesses of institutions and the weaknesses of the church? Have you become an expert on all things wrong? I want to challenge you to be a generous person. Generous with your money, generous with your words, and generous with your actions. And so last week, we launched what we call the Generosity Challenge. You can go to greatlakechurch.com/generosity challenge to sign up. And I'm asking you to consider doing it. And here's all it is. Saying, would you consider being generous with your money? And what that looks like is up to you. It just means whenever I get paid, the first thing I do is give, then I save some, and then I live on the rest. I order my life in that way. The second part of the challenge of the words is saying, will you on a weekly basis go out of your way to encourage someone, challenge someone, text someone? But use your words to do it. It can be written words, but use your words. And the third part is, will you be generous with your actions? And that means once a month, find a way to serve somebody in a way that you would not normally serve them. I want to be the most generous church in this area, but not just financially. I want to be generous with our words and generous with our actions. I want this to be an affirming place where people come in and they feel loved and they feel accepted and they feel cared for. I want this to be an inspiring place. And we can do this together. Here's our prayer for the evening. I'm just going to read it, and we'll close with this. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Thank you, Jesus. Help us with our words. In Jesus' name, amen.
The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. The God I serve knows only how to triumph. My gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Yeah, you turn it for good.